to order. We can begin with roll call, starting from my left.
Tom Tremont from Hebron.
Marlboro.
Danny Holcroft from Silver.
Kevin Williams, Hebron.
Rich Jacobson, Hebron.
Bob Siminski, Superintendent of Schools.
Jane Neal, Business Manager.
Kathy Mund, Administrative Assistant.
Joe.
Joe Connor, Hebron on conference call.
Okay, if we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, the flag is in the back of the room.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 3, public comments. Is there anyone who would like to address the board at this time? Please feel free to come forward, state your name and town. Yes.
Okay. Still state my name. Michael Sarkowski, Marlboro. I just want to say it's nice to be back, and I'll have to see everybody I knew from last year here. And I know that it's budget season and it's a hard time, and I've seen the numbers for it. I just wanted to remind everybody that special programs here that we offer, engineering, video, some of the STEM things, are really, those opportunities are what made me as a student and allowed me to excel at the level I did in my college. And it really is what sets RHAM apart, and I think it's what keeps students from going to other magnets or other places that the board would have to pay tuition for, and it's really something that helps every student out.
Thank you, Mike. And you're just visiting, right? You're not back for good.
No, I'm back.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to item number 4, additions to the agenda. Proposed additions.
I have a few. I wanted to add the discussion on the water heater, possible decision on that. The same for the...
Wait, just real quick. Is it form of a motion? What is the action item? What do you want?
The discussion of possible action concerning the high school hot water heater.
Okay, we have a motion made by Rich to have a discussion and possible action regarding the high school hot water heater.
Second.
Second by Kevin. Any discussion?
It's broken and we need to figure out how we're going to fix it.
I just have a question. Is there a reason why it's not going to be fixed? That it's coming to the board?
We got to come up with the money.
Well, that's my question. I mean, do we not have the money to pay for it? Is that what it is?
Well, that'll be part of the discussion of where we might get that money.
Anybody have any questions on it before I ask another question?
We already had a quote on it anyway. We already have a quote on repairing the...
We got 2 tons.
Oh, we don't?
Yeah, we discussed.
What's the problem?
I'm sorry?
What's the problem? Finding the money?
We have to authorize it.
You know, that's it?
Well, that's my question, because why does it have to be authorized? Do we not have money in the account to pay for it? That's what I'm asking.
No, yeah,
It's not an
definitely.
item that is in the budget this year. So in order for you to determine if you're going to pay for it this year, out of this year's budget.
So then my question is the motion correct to have discussion and possible action about funding for the high school hot water heater replacement? Because I think the replacement's already here, right?
No.
Meaning it's time to be replaced.
Yeah.
It's not still working. So
No.
we don't need to discuss whether or not we're going to replace the water heater. We need to talk about how we're going to pay for the water heater. So can I suggest that we amend the motion, please, then, a friendly amendment to say discussion and possible action regarding the funding of the hot water heater replacement in the high school?
Sure.
Okay, all right, do you accept it from the second?
Yeah.
That's my motion. So is there any other discussions or questions on this?
I have a question on the further discussion. I mean, there's 2 options on the table that I think the board needs to be fully aware of. Is that there's one that there's a replacement for the why the heater fail at the heat exchanger, and then that's one quote. And there's an option for a full replacement, which is a more expensive quote. So that's why I think we need to have a discussion on what is going to be the repair. So there is a cost involved. One of them is 18,000, the other one is 77,000. So I think we have to have the board consensus of what is the right road to go down. And like Ms. Neal explained, we don't have the money in the budget right now. So I think that's the discussion.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Any other items on the agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to add discussion and possible decision on the selection of the solution for the tennis court safety net.
Can you say that again, Rich?
No.
A discussion and possible action regarding the tennis court safety net. Is it a replacement of a safety net, or is it a repair? What is it?
It's new.
Okay, so it's being added for the, okay, discussion and possible action regarding the purchase, is that maybe?
Right.
Purchase of the tennis court safety net.
And installation.
Okay, tennis court safety net and the insulation?
Installation.
Installation, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
We just have a decision to make, A or B, and it is funded.
Okay.
I guess my only question, Rich, is if it's a funded option in the budget, what's the function of the board having a discussion about it? What's the purpose of the board needing to get involved?
Because we either do 20,000 for a 10-foot high, or we do 10-foot additional height, or we do 41,000, something like that, for 20-foot extra height.
Let me ask a question then, Rich, because why has it, is there a recommendation being made by the committee?
Yes.
Well then, why isn't it on the agenda? Why isn't the committee coming forward and saying, hey, we want to put these items on the agenda, approval of the net or approval of this, that you guys have already added, put this together? There's a number of items on the agenda tonight. I have a board rule to try to get us out of here by 9:30. I have the auditors here that are with us tonight, and there's other discussions that have to take place. I mean, I understand the importance and the urgency. It just would be nice that these things would be requested from the committee, that you come by and you're making a recommendation. It makes the discussion a whole lot shorter.
To be honest, I haven't found out how to get stuff on the agenda.
It's very simple. If you have a committee and you have a recommendation, you send it either to Bob or to me, and you put it on the agenda with the recommendations of action that you plan on doing. All right, so is there any further discussion on the tennis court net? Safety net and installation. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Two opposed, or three opposed. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes, right? If so, correct. Joe, that was a yes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
That's 8-6. All right, good more?
So just for clarification for Kathy's point, the first one is 8.5. That's the financing, the funding, I guess, or the hot water heater funding. And then 8.6 will be the tennis court.
And who was the third who voted no? Well, Ken.
Ken, sorry.
No, that'll be enough for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any other recommended changes or additions to the agenda?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it policy for people to be able to attend the board meeting remotely and vote?
Is it policy? No. We've adopted that practice in the past. We've created a precedence to allow members to call in. But that is an item that I'm going to recommend, or at least ask for a motion to put on the agenda, because we do have a proposed policy in the policy committee that addresses people being able to call in. That draft of that policy that's with the committee, and we can talk about it after, restricts members from calling in for executive sessions and executive session tonight. So since we don't have policy, I'm going to be looking to the board for this one time for direction on that. But to answer your question, no, we do not have a policy, but we've allowed it in the rules. I have come back and said you can allow members to call in. We're just trying to refine that policy. So, Which brings me to the last item or addition to the agenda is for discussion, possible action regarding calling into a board executive session via conference call. Board member calling into an executive session via conference call. And that'll be, that's my motion. So if there's a second by Kevin. Since we don't have the policy and we do have a draft policy in progress, I just want the board to make that decision as to how we're going to go with that. So that's the reason for the motion. Any discussion? Any questions?
Are there any Robert's rules on that?
Is there Robert's rules on it? Robert's rules don't necessarily. It talks about etiquette for conference calls, but not necessarily for meetings. But the state, was it FOI commission has rules on members being able to call in. And what happens is basically boils down to district policy. So we kind of create our own rules, and that's one of the things that the policy committee's been working on. We've had a couple of draft policies. It's just waiting to be refined and reviewed with recommendations coming back.
What about voting on anything?
That's a question. It depends on the district.
I'd suggest that we vote, I would suggest that we vote on adding discussion items to the agenda for 8-7 and have that conversation then. Right now, we're just talking about, are we going to even discuss the matter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion or questions? Yeah.
Your point of this tonight is for the closed session, is that it?
Well, yeah,
For that matter.
that's the point. That's why I'm making a motion, because we have a member who's calling in, and it's an executive session, so I just want to.
I think that it's not a very good precedent, nothing personal,
Yeah.
but, you know, especially an executive session, which has strict confidentiality
Right.
regulations.
And to your point,
It
Carol,
opens up a Pandora's box.
and that's why I'm putting it on the agenda for us to discuss. So that's all, because we don't have a policy. And so rather than me just saying I'm going to do it or not do it, for the benefit of the board, I'd rather do it administratively as a motion. So.
If I may add something Kate has already come out and endorsed conferencing calling for Skype, for conference call that we're doing right now. So we've set precedents for this, and Kate has this, established already guidelines for this. It's very, it's a common thing. So I just want to put that on the record that since we follow CAVE procedures mostly, CAVE has endorsed this as a formal communication procedure. So
Joe, I agree with you. We're going to talk about that when we get to the discussion item. So it's going to be, if everybody votes for it, it'll be item 8.7. Okay. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, call the vote. All those in favor of 8.7, motion regarding the permission of a board member to call into an executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yeah. Okay, one opposed. Any abstentions? It's to put it on the agenda to discuss. So it's to discuss whether or not we're going to allow it.
By default, we already allow it.
Thank you. I don't know how you can make a policy now. You've already established.
All right, let's be clear. Let's take two separate issues.
But I just want to clarify Carol's point, just a point of information. The motion was to put on the agenda to discuss whether or not we're going to allow or want to allow the call-in to happen during the executive session. So that's the motion, and that's what we're going to discuss. So by voting for it, you're saying we're going to discuss it as an action item on 8.7
Before we get to executive
session.
Two separate platforms here to deal with. The ability at all to discuss or be part of a session via conference call. Two things there. One, this board has had a precedent where people have participated by conference call in regular board meetings outside of executive session. Two, in policies working on and the drafts that we have had so far, examining other districts, unanimously the districts have had policies that have allowed participation by conference call with specific conditions, of which those conditions right now are met. A, that the person or persons participating remotely do not end up constituting a quorum. We have a quorum physically present in the room, so that's no longer an issue. 2, that the person participating by conference call, if they join in progress or if they drop at any point and then come back, are not allowed to vote on the issue because they were not part of the entire discussion from start to finish and able to hear all points of view. 3, that they're facilitated in such a way that their voice is heard publicly, so that people in the room can hear them physically in the meeting. And then the last piece is the piece that's up for discussion and that we're asking for discussion on prior to executive session, which is, do they get to participate in executive session? I'll discuss what I've seen on that if we add that item to the agenda at that time.
So just for clarification, yep, sure. And so I'll bring it back to vote. All those in favor of having this discussion and possible action regarding permission of a member to call in a conference call for executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, 2 abstentions. And Joe, you voted for it, right?
No, I vote no.
Okay.
So we get 2 noes, 2 abstentions.
Okay, 2 noes, 2 abstentions.
Motion passed.
Motion passed. Thank you. So that brings us, any other?
No, that doesn't pass.
Why not?
Oh, that's right, you need 2/3.
2/3 majority to add to the agenda.
Oh. Motion. Sorry, I apologize.
All right.
Motion. I'm going to make a motion to add to the agenda discussion pertaining to the participation via conference call of any board member at all.
I think that's out of order.
I can ask to add anything to the agenda. It's not out of order.
Okay, motion made by Kevin, is there a second?
I thought we were just going to talk about executive session.
Can't discuss it without a second.
We can't now.
It didn't pass.
It didn't pass.
Oh, did it?
No.
Okay.
There's a majority to change the agenda, so.
Because Robert's rules are not, here's the dilemma we're faced with, folks, is what do we do with this situation regarding executive session? I have a real serious problem with just letting it drop.
We've already set the precedent, so.
Not in executive session. We have not had somebody participate in executive session by teleconference to date.
But we don't have a policy that says no.
Don't have a policy that allows it either. And there is precedent legally that has issues with it.
All right, there we go.
No second on my motion.
I'll second it.
Okay.
I seconded Kevin's motion for the benefit of discussion.
Can you repeat the motion, please?
Discussion and possible action regarding the participation of a board member via conference call.
So you're saying any conference call?
That's what I said.
Second. Any discussion or questions?
Yeah, what, I don't understand the motion.
Bringing a motion regarding whether or not a board member can call.
It's a discussion and possible action regarding the participation of a board member in executive session, Joe. Basically, it leaves the door open for any and all discussion on this issue, period, end of story.
What's the difference if any one of us is calling in versus being in the room? I mean, I'm
When we
sitting
get
in
to
a hotel room here.
then-
There's no
unless-
confidentiality.
When we get to the agenda item, right now, we're just talking about whether or not we're going to put it on the agenda.
This is the challenge, Joe. At this stage of the meeting, all we can discuss is what will and will not be included as part of this meeting agenda. If we don't allow for discussion of it, then it doesn't get discussed at all, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. We can't talk about it. We can't talk about the why yes, why no. So the motion that's on the table now is just giving us permission to talk about it.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye?
Aye. Any opposed? Because you're voting aye or nay?
No, I'm opposed.
You're opposed? Okay, motion fails.
Fails.
Okay. All right, 8.8. Any other recommended changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 5, report of the administration.
Okay. What I have before we get to I've prepared some additional materials for the budget. I just want to distribute these and these for you to review at your leisure. And what we've got here is said, there's a list of new programs included within the budget. I proposed some budget reduction, and I proposed some things for the board to consider. Take a look at if we increase user fees, what would that, what impact would that have on the budget? What if we decided to bond certain capital improvements, what interest rate, what would be a term? And then, as far as technology is concerned, I've provided a rationale for Chromebooks, cost to implement Chromebooks for everybody in 1 year, and then cost to implement Chromebooks on a year-by-year basis. So that, I just give you that for your information and discussion at our next budget meeting. And we will continue to review that and add it, because just given the crunch of time, we have not had an opportunity to meet with everybody, so that we expect some revisions in that list, but we figured we'd get it out to you so it gets started.
Thank you, Bob. Distribution of the bond materials?
I'm sorry?
The other items, distribution of the bond materials?
Yes. The other thing I've got is a book that is the official statement of the borrowing, and I just give one of these to everybody.
There's that book.
Might add that the chairman and treasurer, secretary were busy this evening signing their name about 100 times. So that the proposal is finalized, so that's the bond issue.
Any other questions for Bob on this, or do you have any other items, Bob?
No, that's, I just wanted to distribute those two documents, and I just wanted to get the ball rolling on further discussions with questions.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item number 6, presentation, the audit. John? Accavallo, thank you.
Sure. I'll just talk about the basic procedure, what we usually do.
Yep.
We usually go through the audit report, then through the budget to actual quickly, and then through the findings. And if there are any questions along the way, we'll take those as they come. If there are any that we can't answer, we'll address those at a later date and get back to the board as fast as we possibly can. Moving to the financial statements, on page 3 is our opinion. It was a clean opinion. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to present fairly in all material respects in accordance with GAAP. That's just a paraphrase. It's the best opinion that we could possibly give on audited financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. With that said, moving to the budget to actual, I refer to page 21. I believe it's 21 in the financial statements, which gives you basically, it's 20. The budget to actual shows you the original budget, the final budget, and the actual numbers that are compared against the final budget. Pluses and minuses, there's variances up and down the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, primarily because the final budget mirrors, for the most part, the original budget. What usually happens is that there's changes along the way. Increases in the revenue lines promote or force increases in the expenditure lines as well. With that said, you can see most of the numbers are pluses and minuses, big negatives going up and down to a net number of a surplus of $70,000 for the year, which means that a little bit more revenue came in than what was anticipated, primarily on CREC money of $30,000, E-rate money of $17,000, and a small dollar amount for RHAM money. That's $47,000, accompanied with liquidated encumbrances of $19,000, gives you roughly $70,000, and that's primarily what the surplus was. The appropriated money was spent during the year. The difference is primarily revenues and one liquidated encumbrance. for the year. With that said, that's the budget to actual. I didn't know if anybody has any questions, or I should continue along to the findings that we had.
Any comments? You're gonna go further. I can do my questions later.
I'm going to go into the findings. That
Okay,
we
yeah,
had.
no, I can, the findings as in,
The financial statement, audit findings that we found, deficiencies that
oh,
we
the
found.
deficiencies. Okay, I guess before we get into deficiencies then. I guess let's see. I didn't see anywhere in here that stated the capital, terminology is capital fund, that we have a fund that contains 58,000, it's called a capital reserve fund, because it contains $58,841.
Okay.
And I didn't see that anywhere in here. Did I miss that? That's for capital maintenance?
The combining funds are usually kept in the back of the report. I don't believe.
Bob, can you speak to this? As far as the non-recurring fund and the setting up of the fund in the prior year?
It was set up 2 years ago with $58,000. I'm not sure where it is in the financials. I know it's been separated out, and I'm not 100% sure where it is.
Yeah, it would have been about a year ago. So it would have been right after the.
2 years of money.
It was approved and.
Oh, 2 years of money, yeah.
So it was last year, this year, next year, please define the term.
Right.
Last year, just.
It's been, after reviewing the audit report, I'm not sure where I saw it in there, but I have separated it out, so it stands out now in this year's books. So we've broken it out on the balance sheet for this year. The committed fund balance there.
Is it in the general fund right now? It's sitting in the general fund.
That doesn't have to be in a total separate.
We've moved the money to an account called committed fund balance.
Okay. So is that in this thing?
In the general fund, there's plant operation and maintenance of $153,000.
Yeah, this is separate, and this is, by law, is the only way we can move this money from one year to the next.
Here it is right here. Page 43, net position fund balance beginning of year is originally stated, general fund balance 58,841.
This is page 43.
Page 43, the financial statements.
Okay, so we can,
So that's the 58,841. I have the resolution from June 30th, 2013. That said that the money could go into the non-recurring expenditure account. And since the audit report, and since I found this memo, I have moved that to a separate account, so it sits there. It sits out separately.
does that meet the legal requirements for that non-recurring, where that money is
That resolution was drafted by
targeted
council.
for
I
a?
can't.
Oh, that I know, but I want to make sure our audit is covering the legal aspect of it.
That's why, I mean, we can't speak a legal opinion, but as far as we know, the numbers are correct where they are.
From an accounting perspective, they've been accounted for accurately and
That's
properly.
correct.
Okay. Okay, I guess we'll leave that one for another day. And how about the deferred income? Is that accounted for in here somewhere?
Deferred income?
Well, so the only deferred income that you have is grant money that's unearned revenue right now. It's approximately $17,000. Other than that, there is no, is there something specific?
Specifically would be for the deferred income for the superintendent.
Deferred compensation?
Yes.
Okay, yes, that's in the GASB 34 financial statements in the long-term debt section, yes.
That is in the long-term.
Yeah, I believe there's a liability that's set up.
Can you tell me where that is?
Sure. It's on page 35, you can see the long-term liabilities, compensated absences, and then there's, I think there's $573,000 as of June 30th in compensated absences that are accounted for.
Okay, I had trouble with that term, in compensated absences. Do we know that a deferred compensation is in that number?
It's in that number. We specifically looked at that.
Okay. Okay, that was.
What else is in the compensated absences? Is this teachers' salaries or accrual for vacation? Can you explain that a little bit more, what compensated absences is, please?
Right.
Teachers don't get vacation first.
It's any legal requirement to pay the teachers for days off. It could be sick. I believe most likely it's sick. Off the top of my head, it doesn't concern or have anything to do with vacation time.
How is
Okay,
that?
so that's sick time then, that's why the accrued 6 days?
That's correct.
And to piggyback off of Mr. Jacobson's comments about the deferred income, because it seems to be a continual conversation, and I think we all just want to get clarity on this. Are you 100% accurate in telling the board that the deferred compensation for the superintendent is included in this $554,000?
It's in there. It's deferred compensation.
Okay.
It's recognized as a liability.
It's recognized as a liability.
And then the teacher's sick time, which is a statistical number?
It's unused from the prior year, plus earned, less what's used in that current year, coming up with the net number times their rate of pay.
Okay, then they're only allowed.
It's capped, wherever it's capped out at, that's the total liability, the exposure of the district.
Okay, so, okay. Thank you.
You want to
Continue.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving on to the findings, which would be in the federal and state single audit report, starting on page 13. Our findings during testing, we found certain items that we have to bring to the board's attention, items that would raise to the level of reporting that would possibly not allow the district's financial statements to be materially stated. So these could be major problems that we found during testing that need to be addressed. The first is the double entry accounting system. The district did not use double entry accounting system. The use of the double entry accounting system, including the preparation of the general ledger, improves the district's ability to detect accounting errors. So basically you have debits and credits. If you just have one side, then you don't have an accountability. And if you don't have the accountability, then there's problems, there's potential errors in reporting. We recommend that the district utilize a full general ledger accounting software system for all the funds. So everything should go through that one system, whether it be the general fund, grant fund, capital, non-reoccurring, any of the trust and agency funds. Everything should go through the same cycle. That's our recommendation for 14.1.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure,
Did you see any of the previous audit reports for the district?
I did.
Was that recommendation in any of those reports?
I think last year there was no
There were no,
recommendations.
right, I didn't think so. Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving on, bank reconciliation approval. Bank reconciliations are not formally approved after the reconciliation is performed. We'd like to see that a second person would sign off on the bank reconciliation. So not the person that's preparing the reconciliation, somebody else above them actually takes a look at this and just to sign off, so there's a segregation of duties, which strengthens the system. I'm paraphrasing, I hope that's okay.
Can I ask a question here then, please, sir? So in this case, our procedure is, when you say a second person, would that be somebody, our business manager, Ms. Neal, would she be the person signing this? Or would it be somebody, are you referring that somebody above her should be looking at this?
No, well, the business manager should be the one signing off, absolutely. It should be done by the accounting staff and signed off by the business manager. The business manager shouldn't be performing the reconciliation. I mean, it also depends on how much personnel you have as well. So there's a cost benefit to it. So if you don't have enough personnel, sometimes one person's doing everything, and you kind of have to bring in board members or get a little bit creative to segregate duties.
Thank you.
You're welcome. 14.3, accounts receivable cutoff. Accounts and grants receivable were not recorded at year end. The revenue should be recorded when they become measurable and available. So if a grant was supposed to come in July that's related to June, it should be recorded and pulled back into that proper period in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. We recommend that the revenues be recognized in the accounting period that become measurable and available. 14.4, accounts payable.
Sorry, I have a question on this. If this was done, how do you reconcile that? Do you strike those?
How do we reconcile it?
Well, I can make it reconcile. I'm not an accountant, obviously, but I just want to be clear. If something, what you're referring to is that something was paid in the wrong month, meaning went into the next calendar year, fiscal year, do you discredit that transaction, or do you move it, or is it, properly moved back into the correct year that's supposed to be?
Well, it should be moved before we come in to do our testing, but a review of the receipts should be done subsequent to June 30th. And also, in a lot of cases, the district should know what's coming in for the previous year, and the journal entries should be performed accordingly. For us, what we do is we do a review of the subsequent receipts from the end of the year to the end of field work, depending on materiality, and come up with our test work. And during testing, in a lot of cases, we find the cutoff for receivables, and in the next finding, accounts payable, there's deficiencies, and those amounts should be pulled back into the proper period.
Can you give us, the board, some, if you have the numbers, how many findings were exactly done? How many findings did you come across?
Findings?
With this specific example, yes.
Oh,
How many entries do you know? I mean, in your test, is this something that we should be, is like severe, or is it, intermediate? I know there's going to be some overlap. I mean, I get this, but I just want to know how, if it's something that we really need to address as a board going forward. And I'm sure Ms. Neal can address it, but I mean, was it a severe finding, or is it just like you found one or two things, or did you find 10 things?
Yeah, in that case, it was one or two. It wasn't a huge problem for the accounts receivable. In with respect to the dollar amount in comparison to the budget, it wasn't something that I would say was horrible and would cause your financial statements to be materially misstated, but it is a deficiency nevertheless.
So can I ask you a question? We're talking about a receipt coming in 1 month, and it's intended to be for, let's say, May, but it comes in June, so we record it in June instead of showing it back in May. Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about 2 different budget years?
2 different budget years.
Okay, so it is 2 different fiscal years. Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving on, accounts payable cutoff is just the opposite of that. The district's accounts payable were not properly reported at the end of the fiscal year. Expenditures in the general, special revenue, and enterprise funds were incurred as of June 30th and not properly recorded. We recommend that the expenditures be recognized in the accounting period that they're incurred in accordance with GAAP. So that's just the complete other side of it. That's the disbursement system. Moving on to 14.5, receipts in many, cash receipts, student activities. Receipts in many cases were collected, counted, and remitted only by one individual. If I had to focus on one thing, one major problem area, it would be this, the cash receipt area, just because of the liquidity. That more people need to get involved in the collection process, sign off on the counting. This is where I see problems hit the newspapers and people get arrested over this. It's the student activities. It's not enough. There's not enough people involved in the process. So a formal collection process needs to be put in place where one person's counting, the other person's recounting, and they're both signing off. That money is given to another individual, and the count sheet goes to the business manager, and the deposit's checked against that. So that would be a stronger system than just one person signing off and saying, I counted $250 ticket money, and here you go. And meanwhile, there could be errors or irregularities that take place and not be timely caught. Moving on to 14.6, maintenance of fixed assets. The fixed asset reporting is not being currently maintained. There's no procedure in place to identify and report fixed assets. During the year, I think Jane did get involved with that, and the information did go off to the appraisal company to update the records. This is very important from the standpoint of capital budgeting and seeing how you're going to replace these fixed assets that are diminished over time. To put together a 5-year plan. I say 5 years because that's pretty much what the GFOA says that you should do, and I think it's a good accounting practice to have that in place to replenish those assets as they become used up.
Is there no fixed asset system, or are there some assets that you say that are being recorded, or is it just totally absent?
There was no recording in 13-14. I think there was an appraisal in 11-12.
11-12,
Right.
hadn't been fully updated since.
And so that appraisal was the birth of some sort of tracking identification of the...
Right, yeah. We go on a full bar-coded system that tracks all of that.
Okay.
And that usually gets updated from positions that you can get from your accounting records and disposals that you write from before doing an inspection.
Thank you.
14.7, the accounting policy and procedural manual. We didn't see a formal policy and procedural manual. When you have breaks in key positions, a lot of things fall through the cracks, and somebody can't just step in and say, oh, that's where I get the information from. A policy and procedural manual that's detailed will allow that streamline of the process, the accounting process, and allow for lower amount of time for somebody to get up to speed in a key position. With that said, a proper accounting manual will give a comprehensive review of the existing accounting system and offers management the opportunity to eliminate procedures and improve on them to become more efficient. 14.8, a formal closing policy process. The district does not have a formal monthly closing process. We'd like to see that every month the books and records get closed at, I don't know, if the 15th of the following month or the 20th of the following month, but a full reconciliation of the balance sheet and profit and loss statement is done within a timely manner, so the reports that the board gets of profit and loss, a balance sheet, are actually tied out to meaningful numbers. And with that said, you'll end up looking at the numbers and being able to make proper management decisions on what you have. Without that you're looking at numbers, just one piece of it, expenditures. I've seen expenditures being reported on the cash basis where the revenues were reported on the accrual basis, and the district didn't know that because they didn't have a full picture, full accounting picture of the balance sheet and profit and loss. If you have that, then you can make a determination. You can say, I have all the information to make the decisions. Other than that, you're only getting a quarter of the total information to make management decisions.
So, just so I understand this, because we do have a finance committee and we'll talk about these things. So your recommendation is that we try to make some of our decisions based on a monthly balance sheet for some of these, for managing our, what, business, our purchases, or
Monthly,
just?
that you have at least have it in front of you to look at. The balance sheet,
Right.
your revenues, and your expenditures. So you can look at everything together.
Okay.
With that said, you can look at what receivables you have out there.
So in a balance sheet, that means every month we'd have to true up all the liabilities, right? That would, for every month, you'd have to redo all those, I mean.
No, I don't think that would be a problem because you're on a purchase order system.
Okay.
So you would be able to see what was originally approved to be spent and what was liquidated against those purchase orders, so you can see what's open.
Right.
So with that said, that's your liabilities. That's what you have. That's how you account for your accounts payable. You utilize the purchase order system. Cash management. During testing, we noted that grant expenditures were not timely drawn down. Within a reasonable period of time, a request for grant money should be made so you're properly funding the expenditure incurred. If not, you're using district money instead of grant money. And with that said, you have improper cash management. So really what you want to do is the grant receipt, you want to put in the request as quickly as the money goes out the door. With that said, you'll have a stronger formal drawn down system, and the time between the actual liability and the reimbursement will be minimized.
Can I ask a question? Why isn't this been followed? Is it because we don't have the staff to do this, or is it just convenience that we're not following procedure? Because obviously it makes very good sense that we don't want to use our own cash. We want to use the grant money for cash. But can you elaborate on what the extent of this was? How much? Because we really don't have a lot of grants. We have maybe $100,000 worth of grants. But still, that's a lot of money. But is it a very again, you don't equate these to like a somewhat concern, a finding, but is it obviously I think this would be a big concern from a cash management perspective. So can you give the board a little bit more info on that?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you exactly what the dollar amount is, but I can get back to you. I think it might have been related to the food service program. IDEA.
I can comment on this. In my memo to Dr. Szymanski regarding my responses to the audit findings and recommendations, and then my responses, I addressed that issue of the cash management. Part of it is a lack of personnel. The other is in the past, they would, the department we would charge to exactly what the auditor is saying. Charge to a board ed fund, and then they would reimburse at year end. What I'm doing now is based on what we think we're getting in from the IDA grant, what we've drawn down, we will reimburse the board for those funds until we have the personnel, and it's not the personnel in my department, it's the personnel in the department for the IDE grant that, and HR to determine what employee belongs to IDEA and what employee is a board employee. In other school districts, if Rich Jacobson is a paraprofessional for the IDEA grant, his salary is automatically, when he gets paid, charged to that grant. And if Kevin Williams is charged a paraprofessional for the board, he's coded to that board account. That's not the way it has been done here. And as we move forward, my goal is that people who are charged to grants get charged to grants from the beginning. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. But if I don't know if anybody reviewed my comments, my responses to the auditor's recommendations.
Could you summarize?
Well, I read those, but I mean, so basically you told us that you need more help. So
That's not it. And we're kind of getting off point here, but what I'd like to do is if there are specific questions. Sorry.
You've got the agenda laid out, so finish
Right.
John's
Go
presentation
through the
and
report.
then
If there's-
response
if
from
there's-
Jane.
Right, so, but, and then when we get into, I don't know, Jane, you responded to those and at the request of the Finance Committee, and you were prepared that before we even met. So, and that's going to be part of the Finance Committee report tonight anyway. So, but please continue.
That was actually the last.
That was the last finding, yeah.
Yep, scrolling down, that's it. Okay, great. Okay, any questions? No, you have a question?
As you're done, I don't want to interrupt.
No, we're all set.
I'm curious, you do many schools?
We do about 12 different school systems.
Okay. Are we kind of all along with the other schools do what we do?
I see a lot of areas for improvement. Yeah. I believe that Jane has put in a lot of measures already to improve. I'd say when you have turnover in key positions, a lot of items fall through the cracks, so you have a gap between where you have your former CFO and your new CFO, and a lot of things happen in between.
Two former CFOs.
Two. So there's a lot of turnover.
Year,
So that's pretty much what happens. So in a case where that happens, it's similar. These findings are similar.
We're looking at our books, it's all pretty legal though, right? I mean, we're doing okay, right? I mean, I don't want to see Truminski go to the big house.
He's been there.
When you say legal, I'm a little bit hesitant to answer that because we don't give legal opinions.
John, John, can I ask you this? You gave us an unqualified opinion,
A
right?
qualified opinion on the financials, which is the best opinion that we can give.
Can you explain for everyone, just take a second and explain the importance of an unqualified opinion?
Unqualified opinion means that there's no material transactions that didn't occur that were not found by us that need to be recorded in the financial statements.
Well, so the books look pretty good, so look good. All right. There are some people on the board who don't think it's being run properly. I can see you had some problems because, Jane's new on board anyways, and she's trying to straighten it out where Truminski tried. And, he didn't know offense, but he didn't have really the expertise, but he tried. I think Jane's doing a good job working straightening it out for us. So as long as you're patient with us anyways. And we look pretty good, like I said. Don't go to the big house. So.
I think that the key is to make progress on the findings, and I think Jane has done that. So next year when we sit down and we go through it, those findings aren't 11 or 12, they're 3 or 4 that come out. And when you make 1 or 2 major changes, a lot of them will take care of themselves. So I have faith that Jane can get the job done with respect to attacking some of these items. And if she needs help, she knows how to get in touch with us. We're available to give her guidance on it.
Fine with me.
Any other questions? Comment? I just wanted to thank you for going through this. early with the suggestions. I helped justify why we brought Mrs. Neal on, and I'm very comfortable with her comments of moving forward, that we're going to make a nice, clean system. So thank you.
John, I just have one question for you. What is your practice's tradition in terms of the back end of the process? So when you come in, you do your sampling, your testing, pull all stuff together, what is the stages of your process when you close that process out with the business office, with the district, and then ultimately, obviously this is the final closure of the process, but what happens between when you finish your testing and now?
What usually happens right after we finish, well, can I take it one step before that?
Yeah,
before
absolutely.
we finish?
Yep.
Before we finish, if there's any of the findings we have problems with, we actually sit down with the appropriate level of management before we go ahead and finalize it in the report letter that we do. With that said, we get a further understanding, and we get an agreement with management that yes, these are the problems, your understanding is correct. Once we have that, we close out the numbers, we start preparing the financial statements. The adjustments are given to management. Any of the findings are reported to the board. In this case, I like to report to the board before we even start writing these items down, which we did this year. And the draft of the financial statements is usually given to the audit committee. The audit committee reviews the draft and says, yes, we agree, please move forward with it. And from there, the numbers are finalized and everything is signed off.
Okay, thank you.
Just one clarification, Bob, procedurally, do we have to accept the
What
audit?
traditionally has happened is that the audit report has been presented,
Right.
and at the subsequent
Meeting next month.
the board accepts the audit.
Okay.
One more question?
Yep.
Going back to that deferred income / sick time, the $500 million liability we have. What do you see in other schools? Are they funding that liability, or
Most aren't.
most are funding it?
Are not. I highly recommend that starts funded or that during the negotiation process, and I think Bob's already taken care of this to reduce a lot of the medical costs and things like that, to take that into consideration during the negotiation with the unions of the cost. It's not staggering. I've seen it millions and millions of dollars in other school systems, and it's not being funded. It's on a pay-as-you-go basis. I don't recommend that. I think that if you take an aggressive approach to funding a small percentage every year based on the anticipated retirement date, how you schedule it out every year between that and the capital acquisition plan, and aggressively implement the funding as much as you can, push those through the budget process, I think you'll be in a lot better shape.
What kind of percentages of your?
If you figure out, you say this person's going to retire in 2016, 2017, and you lay out the individuals when their anticipated retirement date. It's a little bit of a guesswork unless the people actually came right out and said, we're retiring in those years. Then you can put them in there and say, we have to fund this person, and this person, and replace them. And in some cases, I believe that the board has buyouts in place where you try to reduce your salary levels and get younger, less expensive staff in here as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. If there's any other questions, please, the board wants to get in touch with us, I believe they know how to. Thank you.
Thanks.
Also include a presentation, Jane Gill, response to our recommendation 6. Is that still on, or is that done?
You gonna need me?
You're on the agenda, right? Is that
I
Jane?
am?
Yes.
Just
Oh.
so it's included.
No.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'll call it.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was that.
So on the double entry, 14.1, the double entry accounting system. The famous new chart of accounts, which we've said probably many times. With that design, now we have implemented that double entry general ledger system. It includes, I'm really just going off my memo, I'm just trying to sum up my memo. So it includes everything, the general operating fund, the grants, flexible spending, cafeteria, and the pay-to-play accounts. Student activities is on a separate piece of software. It's called, it's an older piece of software called EPES. And please don't ask me what it stands for, because I looked it up on the internet and couldn't find it, so I guess they just call it EPES. But it's a system that one of my staff people use. The money for all the student activities is deposited. There's separate accounts for each student activity. In fact, it's the report that you see where Michelle signs off on it and I sign off on it as well. We are going for these private grants, which the auditor talked about. We're in the process of culling them down to combining some of them. And we're going to put it on this EPES system. We think we found a way where we can do a large separation in account numbers so the student activity accounts are far enough separate from these private grants and run it off of that system. There's not enough private grants to buy a separate piece of software or to run it on the Phoenix system. So right now it's being run on an Excel spreadsheet and working with the principals to, like I said, combine some of these accounts. And then we will move it over into this other piece of software. This last paragraph about fixed assets and inventories, people don't normally put that in the system. You run it off of the company that we use. So, and back to that problem, that fixed asset is, it hadn't been done in 2 years, and I walked in the door and they're saying, where is it? And it wasn't around.
Right.
So that's one of the things that has to be, we have to bring that company back in and get them to do this again. I'm not quite sure how they did it before, but somebody obviously walked around, stuck stickies on equipment. Not something not something I have right now and have the time to do. But we're going to figure out a way to meet the auditor requirements. 14.2, bank reconciliation approval. Procedures have been written. We're in the process of doing that. I'm really summarizing here. And I am now approving the bank reconciliations after they're completed in the department. And we've also done some separation of duties. So that's moving along, and we're really going back to last July because we had to set up the new software, the new chart of accounts and everything. All of these different things had to be set up, so we had to go back to July. So I believe we're up to December or January bank reconciliations, but so that's being done. And then once we get up to date, then it'll be done on a monthly basis. 14.3, the accounts receivable cutoff. We've started reporting receivables on a more timely basis, and procedures have been developed. So that's pretty cut and dry. That's what we started doing. Payable cutoff. Like it says here, there were two components. The year-end, we've created year-end closing procedures, and what you would normally do at the end of the year is you create an open purchase order list and it gets reviewed, and that's what you determine gets carried over into the new year for things that still need to be, if the invoice is on in or whatsoever. It was a fluke. We ran an open PO list in all of the piles with the auditor and everything. somewhere along the way it disappeared, and so we were written up for it because they had a tough time trying to accommodate that. It was a mistake, and it was a mistake. And the second part, well, the second part of this finding for the accounts payable from one fund to another, that by setting up these private grants and the student activity funds, we will resolve some of those issues as well. So I'm pretty confident that accounts payable cutoff, most of these will go away, should go away. We should be able to please the auditor. And it's not pleasing the auditor isn't the appropriate term. These are things that normally should be done. They weren't done because of the way the system, they weren't doing a double entry system here. Cash receipts, student activities, that was one of the first things I addressed when I got here, because it's true. One person was counting, money would come into our office. Counting money is probably a 10-hour-a-week job. It's a lot of money to be counted. So one person was counting that money, making the deposit, recording it. We now have, we have an individual who comes in twice a week. She counts the money. The accounts payable clerk is checking it. Before the money even gets to us, I have been told that 2 people do indeed count the money. We changed the form. We created a form to make it a little bit easier for the person out there counting the money. And for example, ticket sales, when they're selling tickets to the basketball game, we now, accounting, passes out, gives out the tickets with a form and says, and tears the ticket up and says, okay, this is your beginning ticket, the next number is your beginning ticket, and when it comes back, we know what the ending ticket is. They need to account for the difference. And we have a few things that are a little quirky here, because during basketball games, people actually donate money. So you have the tickets, and then you have people who say, oh, keep the change, or his 10. So they try to accommodate for that, but it's a little quirky because we do have people who just leave money, or or we have trying to accommodate for those booster club events where they have the tickets that are free. But I think that the cash receipts, and because there's so much cash, it's really important that we try to keep track of it. Because it's really something that is right. It can just disappear, because by the time it gets to us, quite a few people have handled that cash.
Have you seen those plastic sealable envelopes?
We do all that. We have
Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you issued the number with the envelope?
We have all, it's the other part.
Right, when
It's
they
the
come out,
getting to
when
the
they open the
safe,
envelope.
getting to the safe and having the guy pick it up.
Right.
So,
Do we have a machine that counts the money?
no, we have a
it's
bottle.
staff.
Yeah, the person. So we have created control sheets, and I think they're pretty good. I think it's helped. And, quite honestly, the auditors would like, 2 or 3 people to be sitting there counting money. You don't have the staff. The school doesn't have that staff. The secretary or when Jerry's bringing in basketball money, she doesn't have 4 people to stand around and say, watch me count the money. They do the best they can with the amount of people, right? Because
There's 2 of us at the table.
Right, so
We'll
there's
count
2,
it and he'll
right,
count it.
there's 2 people at the table. I mean, if you walk by the basketball game, they're sitting there with a box of money. That's, right off the bat, that's an accident waiting to happen. But they get a drawer, and they have to account for that drawer, and then they take the money in, and then they have to account for the money that they turn in. But, no, we don't have cash registers and that type of thing, and getting out receipts, but most school districts don't have those kind of systems. So, to me, probably one of the biggest ones is this cash receipts, like he said, is very important, because it's cash. I have told athletics, coaches shouldn't be taking money from kids. People should be paying by check. They shouldn't be paying by cash. And we put in, I think Michael's shaking your head, we put in a system where we wrote right on the form, no cash. They need to, sometimes you have a student who's got the $5 and he has to pay
Are
the
you
cash.
talking like
for it.
participation fees or like for trips or
Correct,
dues
correct.
or whatever?
Because you think about it, you got a
Yeah.
field trip, the teacher's collecting the money, I don't even want to know where the money is being held. Hopefully that teacher's walking down the office and they're putting it in a safe. But you've got the kids with their money, but parents should be paying by check for their student to go on a field trip. That makes it safer. The parent has documentation that they paid for it. But I'm sure the teacher's doesn't have the time to give a receipt for every student that turns over $5. So that is, kind of getting carried away here, but that is one of the most important. And I think we've, between the principals and our office, we've put in some better controls for collecting
On
those
that,
funds.
on that subject, would it be possible that they pay online field trips? Have we set that up?
Didn't we talk about field trips online, but I don't know enough about that system. I think we decided we couldn't do that.
Yeah, I think we did look into it, and I think there were a couple of
Yeah.
reasons why it
I
didn't make
think
sense.
the fee they take back is
It's right.
It's expensive to use if you're using small amounts.
And I'm
You
not
have to
talking
charge more to account for the fees, and it can double the cost in some trips just for the fees.
And I'm not talking the ski club and those kind of things. We're talking about the trip to Sturbridge Village type of, never mind, you guys probably don't go, it's fine. Whatever they do in high school.
They do.
I'm used to Sturbridge Village. So,
But checks are sort of coming past that, so I think we need to think electronic payments.
Yeah. So that's 14.5. Again, the fixed assets, that's a matter of the company and getting somebody to take the inventory and counting and tracking. So that's something that just still needs to be worked on. Quite honestly, fixed assets was not at the top of my list because we had other things to take care of. 14.7, as I mentioned, there is a policy and procedure manual that's I found in my office, but it doesn't really do much good if it's not in the appropriate place, and it's old. It's 2007, revised in 2008. We have the procedures that we've written, we've put on the network, so my staff can refer to those procedures, and if they need to pass that procedure on to somebody else, they can just email that procedure to that person. So that's how we're doing it. The monthly closing, that's something that has to be put into place once we get everything totally set up the way we need to get it set up, and then yeah, they want us to close the month, we'll, I'll take a look at that. But at least we'll be able to do the balance sheet on a monthly basis once, like I said, we get everything set in place. So the goal is that, this is done by the end of this year so that the auditor can see that, it might have taken us a whole year to do it, but we got it done. And I think I addressed that cash management when I talked to, referenced Mr. O'Connor's question about, give us an example, and then basically that IDEA. Part of our problem again is we hire someone, we don't have enough staff to say this is where the person should be charged. That's it. Those are my comments, and then I made a conclusion. I don't need to go over that. I think everybody read that. So, and fine. I think it was a good audit.
Thank you, Jane.
A couple questions? One, at some point, I'd appreciate a copy of the account policy. Is it up to the board? The manual, your accountant manual, or whatever you call it.
Well, these are individual policies, individual procedures we're writing for things that they need to do.
Okay.
It's not in the form of a manual. It's not in the form of, here's what the business manager will do. The procedures manual like that takes a very long time
Is
to.
it task oriented?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have a
So-
procedure manual then, we have.
No. So we're dealing with the procedures for how to reconcile the bank statement, procedures on depositing the cash, that type of thing. You know, to address the needs for the people out of the district as well. You know, I'm working on a procedure for how to request payment out of the student activity account so that it's not a memo, it's not an email, it's, you know, we're going to create a form. Sometimes you just need to have a form. You know, auditors like to see forms, they like to see paper. So, but that type of thing.
And then my other question is there any concerns or things you need that you want to communicate to the board?
I have to think about that. That's off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you, Jane.
Danny, I could have one question. Jane, is there, since you don't have, and I know you're understaffed, it sounds like that's the key message I'm getting. So, with the auditor's question, we have to have a manual. So you don't have the time. Do you have any suggestions to the board how you and your department can, you know, do we need to look at outside sourcing to create this manual so we can conform and comply with the policy? Do you have any suggestions on that?
Well, I think between the procedures we've written, my colleagues through CASBO, there's a lot of people have manuals out there. It's a matter of, it's not my intention to recreate the wheel. Writing the procedures specifically to us, yes, but as far as, you know, people will encumber funds and use a purchase order, that's kind of a generic procedure, and I'm sure we can find things through, you know, other sources, and then it's a matter of just putting it together. And I'm confident that if the auditor sees that we're making progress, it's something that they find favorable. There's a lot of districts, they always talk about having the policies and procedures manual. It's, I hate to say it's pie in the sky, but it's one of the things that the auditors like to see, but, you know, it's hard for districts to actually have that. You have your board policies, so, you know, as long as we're following board policies that have to do with finances, I think we're okay. And, you know, I'll work on trying to get different policies from CASBO, the school business officials. So it's not that I have to sit down and write the manual. Plus the manual that's there may be some things in there that are fine. It's just when I saw 2007, I just put it back in the drawer. I didn't even bother looking at it because I figured it was just too old. So.
All right. Thank you, Jane. Moving on to reports. Item number 7, committee reports. Communications and technology.
Communications technology was snowed out last meeting, and we're scheduled for one for tomorrow, but that will not take place. An agenda was not posted. I'm trying to find an alternate date, but given the budget calendar, it may be tough to find another date between now and the next regular meeting in April.
Facilities.
Joe, do you want it or do you want me to take it?
You go ahead, Rich. You'll have a difficulty hearing me, I think, so. But
Okay.
I'll chime in if I need to. Go ahead.
Okay. We briefly talked about the window replacement. We gave the go-ahead to get the testing done for the fault analysis. So at some point soon, or relatively soon, we'll get that testing work done. We spent a whole lot of time discussing the documents that were sent out concerning the capital improvement plan and the general maintenance budget. If you look at that, we have a lot of things on these budgets that we do not have the money for. Some of this stuff, most of this stuff has to be done, if not this year, it has to be done next year. So, as a board, we have to figure out where we're going to come up with this kind of money. We have $39,000 for the current year that we should be coming up with. we have 85,400 for next year's budget, and this is general maintenance budget. If you go to the capital budget, the current year, we should come up with basically $237,000 out of this budget, where we have about 100,000 in the budget for. So somehow we're gonna have to come up with another roughly $40,000 for the current budget year. Next year, which we only have 100,000 in the current proposed budget, we need to come up with $360,000 to accommodate the capital. That doesn't include any of the traffic study, assuming that we can get the state funding for that. Some of that we have to do by law. The ADA compliance has to be done. The fire stops has to be done. Included in some of this stuff is a bunch of safety requirements. Right now we don't have a PA system that operates in some of the places in the school, which is part of the lockdown procedures. And then we have a bunch of stuff that's failing. We have the hot water tank failing. We have the track that is about 5 or 6 years overdue for sealing. And as you see from the list, it goes on and on and on. So at some point, this board has to come up with a solution to this, and I don't know what it is. So we talked about that. And
Use of the auditorium.
the use of auditorium, right? We talked a little bit about the use of auditorium. Last year we went to the outside management for non-school related functions. And Dr. Zazinski said it's working fine for some of the private groups, the dance clubs and stuff. It is a bit of a, it's a big hit for some of the smaller local groups like Cub Scouts and groups like that. And we didn't really come up with a solution for that, but that'll be another thing that we got to continue the discussion. We really don't know how to resolve that one. That was it.
Thank you, Rich. Moving on to policy.
Policy also got snowed out, and so as a result, items from last meeting that were that completed first reading, there was feedback that needs discussion, so I've asked the chair to table moving those to second reading until after the next policy meeting, so we can accommodate the feedback that we received. So you'll notice on the agenda, no policy discussion there.
Thank you, Joe. Program did not meet, but I got 2 possible dates from Kathy for either March 31st or April 1st. So both Manny and Judy were with me signing documents before, but both of them had to head out and couldn't be here tonight. So Rich, check your calendar to see if those days work, and then I'll run it by Manny.
Now, we currently have it on the schedule every month. Does that not work for people?
Well, that's what I'll find out. That's what I'm asking. So what's that regular date? The 1st?
The second Thursday of every month.
Second Thursday of every month? Okay. Well, I'll check with Manny, and I don't think it was okay with Judy, but I didn't, I'll talk with Manny about it and see. But if you can look at these 2 days to see if they work.
You said 31st?
The 31st and the 1st. Okay.
Of April?
March 31st and April 1st.
March 31st is fine.
Okay. Thank you. I like that. Just
But I would like that we set it up every month at the same time.
okay. Let's do that when we meet. I can suggest with the rest of the group. Negotiations. We met last week or 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Wow. Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago already. And we'll be discussing those items during executive session tonight. Athletic and extracurricular activities.
We didn't have any meetings, so nothing to report.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Finance, audit, and compliance, we did meet on March 4th. I don't want to rehash all the items that Jane just went through following the audit, but let's see, the there was some specific questions that the committee received from the board. Discussion on the fiscal year audit. The board had specifically, not the board, but the committee met with Jane and Bob or Dr. Sminsky and asked that we try to get ahead of the findings in the audit report, which was, Jane was already halfway on her way to completing that before we even asked as a committee. So you have those responses from Jane. Payroll system, the question about the payroll system being able to encumber payroll expenses. At our meeting, Jane reported to the committee that the accounting system programmers were scheduled for probably last week by now. My minutes say next week, but that was probably the last week.
We're gonna start encumbering payroll in the new fiscal year.
Okay, so payroll will be encumbered in the upcoming year in the accounting system, right? So then there was the request for revenue report needs and format, and then the committee discussed this. The committee did not agree that a unique revenue report was needed. Jane suggested that key revenue receipts can be highlighted in the monthly financial reports. So it would be interesting to see, because that guy, John Macabello, or whatever, the accountants were recommending a P&L for the month. I mean, the P&L would show revenue for the month.
And once we get the revenues caught up, there's an actual revenue sheet.
Right.
Yeah.
That would come out of the system.
But it's,
yeah. Okay. And then one of the questions about discussing the feasibility of exporting financial reports to either MS Excel or was it comma delineated, or what is it, CSV or whatever other similar format.
Separated values.
Jane reported that. So that's it. Thank you. Jane reported that that issue was resolved. So the budget transfer process, policy and schedule. The committee discussed the 8 line items in the accounts. One was pursuant to policy is salaries, employee benefits, purchase services, tuition, public in-state, tuition, all other, supplies, property, and 8 is other. Discussion ensued about how these are core line items, accounts by which board approval is required for transfers. Sub-account transfers within each line item do not require board approval as per district policy. Jane Neal and Dr. Sminsky confirmed that transfers requiring board approval will be presented for approval on a quarterly basis or is needed for emergencies. We talked about the budget calendar.
Wait, can you explain that again?
Yes, there are essentially 8 line items pursuant to board policy by which accounts only require board approval to transfer money between. And those were the 8 accounts that I read off.
I will disagree with that.
That's fine. Thank you.
So what do we do to get that discussed out and discussed?
Well, the committee discussed it and we're recommending no action.
Well, right now, the current status of budget is what has been handed out every month for.
We're talking apples and oranges. You're talking about reports and I'm talking about budget transfers.
Budget transfers are to the budget that we approved through district meeting. The district meeting, we have basically an object, high-level object status.
The object report and the program report will continue to come out on a monthly basis.
All transfers that are to the district, the district voted on a budget. They voted on the budget we presented was the high-level object budget. So any transfers within line items within that budget that the district approved, we have to authorize.
Policy doesn't say that.
Policy doesn't say that.
Yes, it does.
Rich, you're out of line and you're out of order. This is a discussion of a committee report. I'm giving you the report based on the committee's discussions and what our recommendations are. And the recommendations are that the policy is clear the way it is. It's the way the policy is being adopted, and that's the way transfers are going to take place, because that's all that needs to take place.
Excuse me, but that is incorrect.
Okay, then fine, thank you. It's
Okay.
noted, duly noted.
How do we talk about it?
Well, you can raise your concerns to the committee. Send me an email or send the entire committee to the email that you disagree with what our recommendation is, and we'll discuss it at the next committee meeting. The next item was the budget calendar status and update. We talked about the calendar was updated and Bob distributed at that time. And it was it. We adjourned at 9:18. Okay, moving on to, let's see. Finance going on to student reports. The students are not here, so that brings us on to facilitators. Educational Foundation. We need to have someone for Educational Foundation.
The Educational Foundation is going to have a spelling meeting on the 23rd.
On the 23rd of March.
April 23rd.
April 23rd. Thank you. Judy's not here for the EastCon report. Kevin, anything on CAVE?
CAVE, Day on the Hill's coming up on March 25th from 8:30 a.m. to noon. It'll be at the Bushnell. This is an opportunity for boards to interact directly with our legislators in Hartford. There'll be a legislative leadership session, issue briefings, an education rally, specific visits with each of the district's own legislators, and there's also a student participation element of the event. So if you're interested in participating, just cave.org, and it's right on the link's right on the front page to do a registration.
Thank you, Kevin. Chair report, the bond refinancing was done. I just want to express my thanks to Manny. The time and the days that we spent on the phone with the transaction and today, and Judy joined us as well as today, signing all the documents, which you have a copy of the official statement. It's a lot of time and effort, but that is done, so that was good. And thanks to Bob too for doing all that and getting it together. That brings us to action items 8.1, approval of the minutes of February 23rd, 2015 regular meeting, enclosure 8.1A for February 28, 2015 special meeting, enclosure 8.1B, and the March 2nd, 2015 special enclosure 8.1C, and March 9, 2015 special meeting, enclosure 8.1D. Is there a motion to accept or approve? Motion from Rich, second by Mike. Any question, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes.
Personnel actions, 8.2, retraction of retirement dated your enclosure 8.2A. Bob, do we need, I know we talked about this last time as well.
We need to pass a motion rescinding the previous motion, and then pass another motion accepting his retirement on June 30, 2016.
So do we do that tonight?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess what I'll do is I'll ask for a motion to rescind the retirement of Frank J. Schmidt that was originally approved for when? What was it? Was effective?
It was.
It was
Sorry.
December 2016.
Oh, it's right there, I'm sorry. Wait, okay. I apologize. I'm reading the note that was in the handout. For the package this week, I don't have the original. So I apologize, I don't know the date. So if it seems that I'm a bit aloof, I apologize. But so we need to motion to rescind the retirement effective, you said April?
I think it was December 2016.
2016, okay. So there's the motion. Motion to rescind the retirement of Frank J. Schmidt effective December 2016.
Did we pass that motion last week?
We passed it a couple of meetings ago.
No, you withdrew it because he was going to do December 16 and you wanted him to retire at the end of the school year, remember?
His retirement was...
But if we didn't accept it, do we need to rescind it? I guess that's the
Well, we made an original motion.
Wait, a year ago to...
Yes.
What was his original retirement? Yeah.
That's what I thought.
August or July 1, 2017, right? Or, I can't remember when.
No, his first motion was to retire in December.
That was last week.
I'm sorry, he was going to retire in he was going to retire in 16. He sent another letter in asking that he was going to retire in 15. He sent a letter in asking that his retirement go to December 2015. Now he's saying he wants to retire in June 2016.
Can I do it in one motion? Do I need two separate motions? Or can I say motion to rescind the original retirement request and accept it effective? I can't do that?
You can't rescind it.
We can't just...
Can we approve a retraction?
Yeah, why would-
Approve a retraction of what?
Of the notice for
Yeah, I
retirement
think
dated
you'll-
June 15th.
Exactly, I think you have
Okay.
to approve
All right.
the retraction of the retirement. They're back to being,
You can't do that. Then the 3 years starts over again.
All right, well, you know what then? I'm going to table this, and we'll put it on the next agenda. We need to get advice from legal counsel, and I'd like to make sure we have the dates, the documents, so that at least we can give Mr. Schmidt the benefit of giving him, you know, the due diligence to make sure that this gets done right. So there's no reason to just try to guess what the motion should be, so. Okay, that brings us to item 8 point, are we into the additions yet?
Not yet.
8.3, receive and file the following documents: the levy payment schedule 8.3A, cash flow reports 8.3B, monthly financial reports 8.3C, student activity report enclosure 8.3D, student discipline 8.3E, special education report 8.3F, sick day report enclosure 8.3G, curriculum instruction assessment instructional technology report 8.38, and cafeteria report enclosure 8.3I.
So moved.
And a motion made by Kevin, is there a second?
Second?
Second by Carol, any discussion?
Yes. I do not find the financial reports that were handed out in that document sufficient for the board to do the proper oversight that we are required to do. We have many line items that are severely over-expended, and we have no accountability for that. We are 3 months to the end of the year, and we have no idea where we are financially. So there's no way that we should be approving those financial reports without having that information. We discussed about a year ago that we would be following much more closely with transfers between line items, and we haven't done any. Actually, there was 3 transfers that were done at some point there. So we have no idea whether we're going to meet our budget right now as a board. And there's no documentation that will support that. So to be fair to our voters in our towns, we should definitely not approve these reports, and we have to find out where we are in the budget. Are we going to meet the budget?
Any further discussion? Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. 8.4 is discussion and possible action regarding the proposed budget of 2015-16 budget. Bob, anything for tonight?
I think just the thing that I had this evening, and that's be part of our discussion at the next meeting.
Is that meeting Monday night?
So Monday and a week from tonight.
A week from tonight, okay. Any other questions?
Yeah. Reviewing the documentation that was given out at the last budget meeting, the electric rate expires in December of 2016. Is our new budget accommodate a rather severe increase in electric costs come after that period of time?
The budget will end in June of 2016, so that we'll be going out to bid during that summer period. We'll be contacting CCM. They were our last, they guided us through the last bidding process, and we'll ask them to do that again. And their fee for it is a charge per kilowatt hour, and we'll be looking to continue the same arrangement. If you look at the rate that we received, it was truly a favorable rate, and we want to continue that.
Right. From a personal experience, my rate went from about where we're at here at RHAM up to 12. So there's a big increase right now in electric rate. Now you can get in the 9s now, but you're not going to get in the 7s.
No, that's why we use CCM to guide us through the process, because it's, as you know, a rather complex process. And having CCM do it as a consultant to us they've maximized our ability to leverage our rate just because of the size of customer we are.
Mhm.
So that we're looking forward to doing that again with them. And I need to say that the last time we did it, and I agree with you that the rates are volatile by the month. And what happened was we got a more favorable rate than the town of Hebron, just given the monthly spread. And I think that one of the other things that makes us an ideal customer, according to CCN, is the fact that we operate from essentially September through June, and when the peak demand for electricity is in the summer for air conditioning, we're for the most part offline. Our demand is relatively minor. And so those are the things that help us capitalize on.
So what rate are you using from December to June 30th?
No, we're starting in the fall, so this will be 15, and we'll only have 6 months of 16, so that it will be, it's when we do the next budget that we'll be the rate.
It expires in the middle of this current budget that we're working on.
No.
I have a question, if I may, if I'm off.
Well, we're still researching Rich's question.
Okay.
It goes 12/12 to 12/16.
12/16. So it's all of next year.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm off by a
here's the
year.
sheet.
Yeah. Okay. 12/16. There we
So
go.
we'll be bidding it in summer.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Then I stand corrected on that one.
Joe?
Thank you, Danny. I have a question regarding Ms. Jane's email or letter to Dr. Sminsky on the policy number. You'll notice that I created a new reporting structure that follows board policy number 3165 that details the budget by the designated line items as follows. I'm wondering, reading the policy, the way that policy is written, 3165, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is really for the next year's budget. Am I confusing this? Is this, you're telling us that your new set of, you're in policy with this year's budget? Because it says 2015, for 14-15 budget. I really think it should have been policy 3160, and I think that's where it comes into the correlate and the encumbrances and the overages and the report that Mr. Jacobson and I have been looking for. So I'm wondering if this was either a typo or am I misunderstanding this letter?
The way I interpret the board policy, it talks about the transfer of funds within the budget, and let's see, did I say 31? Board policy 3165. Beyond 3160, there's board policy 3165 that talks about budget procedures and line item transfers.
Okay. I need to see, well, where specifically is it? I didn't see that in 3165.
Page 2.
I saw that in 3160.
Joe, it's page 2 of policy 3165, about halfway down the page.
So,
Starts with budget line items, line items in the board's budget estimate shall include but are not limited to the following, and then it gives 8 categories. Line items in the budget may be allocated more specifically by the superintendent and his or her designee in the development, administration, and monitoring of the budget.
Could you bring that line
Okay,
again?
so if you read it above that, it says for an annual budget for the next fiscal year. So this is for next year's budget. This is not for this year's budget. What this policy, how I read it a couple of times, and I may be reading it wrong, but It's an indefinite public hearing to discuss the proposed budget. The board shall approve and move forward an annual budget for the next fiscal year. Make available on request copies thereof and deliver a reasonable number to the town clerk for each of the towns in the district, blah, 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 and to elaborate what you just said, Kevin. So this policy, in my interpretation, means next year's budget, not this year's current budget. I think where we're supposed to be getting the information is in policy 3160. That's the information that we're supposed to get on a monthly basis and then on a quarterly basis as well. Not 3165.
I guess, Joe, I'm reading it the opposite of the way you're reading it.
But what does next fiscal year mean?
Well, I think
From 2013-14,
Right.
this year.
I guess this board policy is trying to cover, it looks like it's trying to cover two things. The board approving the budget, the next fiscal year's budget, and then talking about monitoring the budget. To me, you're monitoring the budget, after the budget's been approved, you're monitoring the budget based on budget line items. So that's why I created this latest budget report. And then, of course, added to it, if you noticed, I added projected encumbrances and anticipated revenue. When the report that I've given in the past, which I can still most certainly give, that's just by object or just by program, isn't going to include projected encumbrances or projected revenues, because that's exactly what they are. What do I think is going to happen? For instance, payroll, which we are not encumbering, but I'm projecting what I think we're going to spend in payroll. So that's why I changed the format after discussing this with finance. But it was in finance, I misunderstood. I didn't realize they still wanted to see the object budget and the program budget, which I most certainly can print out for the budget meetings. But again, it's not, I don't want to get, I don't know, tell me when you want me to stop here. You know, when you're trying to transfer between individual lines, that doesn't, just doing transfers between lines doesn't tell you where you stand in your budget. All it does is you're moving money around. I think this memo that I wrote tells you where I think we stand. I'm projecting you have a balance of $194,000. That's different than printing a budget printout with all object codes and you see a bottom line of $6 million. I can say, here's your object code budget, okay, we're going to spend the $6 million. I'm trying to do a projection of what's happened, what I know is going to happen, what I think is going to happen, knowing that people have asked for, you know, we've had to purchase things that are not budgeted. Obviously, we've had repairs that might not necessarily have been budgeted, but if something breaks down, you know, you have to fix it.
I don't disagree with you, but I think you got these things confused though, because I think the policies are very clear, and I don't want to take up too much more time here, right? We as the board, it's just board policy, says the board, this is 3160, transfer the funds within the budget. So that to me tells me that we're in current year budget, that the Connecticut General Statutes provides authority for the Board of Education to expend funds as appropriated by the district meeting for maintenance of the school and its programs. To assist the board in carrying out its fiscal responsibilities, the superintendent of schools shall prepare a monthly financial statement. The financial statement shall include, for each budgetary subdivision, amounts budgeted, amount expended to date, the amount encumbered or obligated, the unencumbered balance, cash flow report, monthly financial report, student activity report. And then it goes on to say, additionally, the superintendent shall inform the board on a monthly basis of the major projected over expenditures or surpluses, and in the case of projected over expenditures, his or her plans for balancing over expenditures. And then it goes on to talk about corporate. So I think what we're trying to get, and we've been asking for this, and I know you've got a lot of things going on. You've done, I think, a very good job of giving us certain information. But what we did haven't seen, I did see it this month. I think it was in one of the reports that came after the packet came out, that you showed where we're overage and where we have surpluses. And I think that's what we need to see that, and then, at least I do anyways, for my people in Hebron anyways, I think it's good for prudence to do that. I mean, we need to make sure that the checks and balances are happening, and I think that if we could see that, and then we could see where we're over in oil, for example, or whatever, I'm just using that as an example, then we have to have a discussion of where that money is coming from. You know, because we're the ones who've got to, we're not going to be in the situation where we were last year when we approved $740,000 at the end of the year. I don't think that makes any sense in the, you know, and that just shows that the board is letting, you know, the administration run the, you know, free, and that we can't. We have to have a checks and balances here. And I think these policies are pretty straightforward. So that's why I'm just bringing it up, but I think you have these things, there's a misinterpretation on your end that, or maybe some I am, but I think I think 3160 is a policy that is in place that the Board of Education is the only one that can approve the over expenditures along with the superintendent's recommendation, and that's clear in this. So that's where I think we need to reevaluate this process. And I thought we were doing that with the finance committee, but this is 3165 is not, that is clearly into next year's budget, not this year's budget. That's my take on it.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
We're on the proposed budget discussion.
Just don't make my forehead up and we're meeting.
We've got, what, $2.3 million spending increase and a $1.38 million levy increase or something? I don't know, maybe, but anyway. And for new programs and initiatives, all we got is like $444,000. So everything else is just maintaining the current level of programming?
Maintaining the current level of programming. I mean, I didn't account for salary increases. Those are programs that are new to the budget. For example, salaries went up, but I didn't include that in that report. But we asked for a new desktop technician. That's new to the budget, so it made that list.
Yep. Okay.
Bob, does your proposed $184,000 plus some proposed reductions doesn't take into account the savings for the from the bond refinance?
No, it doesn't. If you look at the sheet, it says items to consider. Just for the technology, I'm saying. And these are just thoughts that have been generated by past discussions. Parking, looking at charging for parking using the $20,000 that that might generate to maintain the parking lot. User fees, take a look at increasing athletic and club user fees. And those are just, these are just what if scenarios. I'm not suggesting that these are the numbers, but I'm showing you that these are places that revenue has been generated in the past. Item 3, you can see that, the interest reduction in the bonds, I haven't applied that. In item 4, I'm talking about what would happen if we bonded a significant amount of capital improvements. The bank has recommended that if we, for example, whether to borrow $1 million for a 10-year period, we could expect an interest rate of about 3%.
What page is that on, Mark? Back here?
It's,
Okay.
After the list of reductions.
after the list of reductions. But by the way, the list of reductions, what I did was, I met with the coordinators on an individual basis and said, okay, let's just review our budget, and is there anything at this point in time you feel that you could reduce your budget by? And then that's the genesis of this item. I met with the math science coordinators. I've got meet with the media center people and operations and maintenance before this is finished.
Any some questions concerning this document? How old the boys and girls track and field uniforms?
I met with Mr. Canettis this afternoon, and he said that they were in good shape. I don't remember the age of them, and he suggested that we buy boys and girls soccer uniforms instead, and that was his recommendation, and that we look at those uniforms next year, along with basketball.
Okay. I see you cut the geometry textbooks.
Based on a meeting with, what he felt was that the current material for one of the geometry books, the current materials with teacher supplements were going to be fine for him. That was his opinion. And then he wanted to reduce the other geometry textbooks because it would be he has materials working for the honor kids, and these would be for the level 1 kids. Those were his recommendations.
I'm very concerned with those removals because it's these books that line the kids up with the Common Core. Right now they're using books that aren't associated with the Common Core, and it is the Common Core that they are going to be tested on the Smarter Balance, and more importantly on the SATs.
As I said, I had a lengthy discussion with him and said, do you feel comfortable doing it? He said, I feel very comfortable doing it.
But he had a whole line of other books that he wanted to buy over the next couple of years to meet those Common Core requirements. The algebra books, the calculus books. So we pushed off last year not buying them. And now we're going to push them off another year.
I didn't twist his arm or anything. I said, can you review it with me? How do you feel about it? Do you think they're absolutely essential? And those were his responses.
Wasn't the request like 30,000? The original request?
Yeah. His original appropriation was 40,000.
40,000, so we reduced it slightly, or partially, or third, or half?
Some of these
20,000, so we reduced it by half. He didn't reduce it completely.
I personally don't think that's fair to the students that are going to be trying to take these new tests. Those books are old and they aren't following the method. And then the other question is, I see you cut maintenance on a number of places here.
It's a proposal. It's not cuts. He's proposing budget reductions.
Okay. I'll rephrase that then. You have a number of cuts in your proposal here for maintenance. How do you plan on addressing the two maintenance documents that came out of the facilities subcommittee?
The maintenance, these are not individual maintenance. These are equipment repairs for individual departments. For example, music instruments. I asked what the actual was in a particular year, and then they went with the actual.
Okay. I don't see any increases in here for the maintenance items that were in those other documents.
Remember, as I said earlier, I didn't review any of the maintenance budget. That was one of the budgets I haven't reviewed yet. I haven't reviewed the library media budget. Those are two that come to mind that I haven't had an opportunity to meet with.
Okay. Okay, well, let's save that one for another day then. Okay, that was it on these.
I will say though that there's 100,000 in there for, I carried the 100,000 over for the maintenance projects that's in the existing budget.
Do you feel that is sufficient?
I haven't finished reviewing the maintenance budget yet.
Any other questions? Okay. That brings us to item 8.5, which is, I'm just going back up, discussion and possible action regarding the high school hot water heater funding.
The hot water heater failed. We have two places, one to replace an element unit, and that's $18,000. The problem with replacing the element is that the tank is 12 years old, and the tank is similar to the other one that failed in the boiler room. We're looking to purchase a similar model so that it will take its place online. We feel that the stainless steel tank is best. If we replace just the heating element in it, the tank is 12 years old, and we have no guarantees as to how long this tank will last.
So what's the concern about funding?
What I was proposing is that as we look at Jane's projection, that we use $100,000 of the estimated, or about, I think about $80,000 to purchase the water tank and begin the process of replacing it and installing it in high school.
Questions?
So your proposal, so where are we going to take the money from?
The place I would take the money from is the school resource officer, because we haven't funded that program totally, and it's contained in the $194,000. And that leaves us the other, I think, approximately $80,000 to the remaining projects.
So what do you need, a motion to transfer? Or what do we need?
I would like a motion to proceed with it and to ask Jane to prepare the necessary budget transfers for the next board meeting.
Okay.
What's the specific dollar amount you want transferred?
Did you decide did you pick one of the vendors?
I didn't pick one. I didn't pick one of the vendors. Simply, I didn't bring my sheets on. I think that the high price is let's say $78,000. I'm not sure. I need to speak with the other vendors. One of them came in at $68,000, but he had a question about his rigging price. So I'd just like to leave it at the high point and go from there.
78,000 would be your high point?
Yes, it would be.
And that would be for the replacement of
The high school hot water heater.
It's something we never talked about, at least when I wasn't in the facility committee meeting, and these questions came to me after, but has PBI, because we did this last time when the first water heater failed, I still have a hard time from a mechanical standpoint why this thing is failing. If it's inferior product, we got 12 years out of it. Is PBI been contacted to come in and give us some, like we did last time, and say, hey, this is why the heater exchanger failed. Is it overused? Is it, who's making the determination that the tank is 12 years old and we can't pass this with a new heat exchanger and go on for another 10 years?
That was the logic. That was the logic we used in the when we did the last tank.
I got a question. When you say failed, are we saying like the water heater just exploded? I mean,
No, there's a heat exchange unit.
All right, there's a heating element inside now.
It failed.
All right, that's what failed actually. Because I know the tank is original, but it isn't that old. did anybody actually look at the tank itself? Is the tank okay? Do we just have to, instead of replacing the whole tank?
That's what we shared with you from the technician.
Mm-hmm. They recommended complete replace, or just the element?
What they said was that if you replace the element, you can make no guarantees of how long the tank will last.
No, I can understand that. No, they're not gonna wanna touch it. But, no, I was just wondering if anybody really looked and see how, if the tank is really in that bad shape. I know. They wanna put a tank in.
Last time we had that conversation with them, and they certainly, if you want to pay for a internal inspection, they can do some level of inspections. And of course, if they took the heat exchanger out, they can do a much thorough inspection, but,
We're still not gonna warranty it though.
they're not gonna warranty it.
Well, what,
So just for money,
Well, they're not
it
gonna
didn't
warranty
guarantee
it.
you anything new.
No one's gonna warranty an old part, no.
Is there a question of capacity and size for what's being used? Is it,
The engineers, this is what was designed by the engineers.
I understand that, but it's not bad engineers too.
It seemed to carry the school for 12 years. That's why we're going for a one-for-one replacement.
I just have a question. The quote here for the new Aquaplex tank, the Aquaplex tank, it has a 25-year limited warranty, the new one, is that correct? Do you know what the warranty was on the old one?
I think it was 10 years. 5 years. Was it 5?
5 years.
5 years?
There's
So
the
this-
option
This is
to,
a higher quality
Buy
tank
more.
that we are looking at for the
That's
new?
what it's
At least it has a better warranty, it sounds like.
Well, I'm just wondering, it's, it looks like it's more promising.
It's-
That's why reflected in the price. As far as what went into the building, it was probably the low bid.
Yeah.
it's really similar.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's just my observations here. The heater itself, though, is 10-year limited on a heat exchanger. So, what you were talking about in terms of how they want to look at the tank versus the heater. Obviously, the previous tank was not this quality.
You must have got a heck of a deal on it.
Yeah.
yeah, so
Contract.
Like the windows and the floor work we got and whatnot.
what failed on the other hot water heater?
Do you want to finish the motion before we discuss, or do you want to discuss?
Let's discuss it, we'll take the motion.
Okay,
Let's just see,
right, well, the previous one, the one I was sitting right next.
Mike was.
Yeah, what failed on the other heater? The kitchen
It had
was.
a crack,
Crack.
in the wall.
All right, so that was a totally different type of failure.
Well, it was the tank. It was a crack where the heat exchanger connected to the tank.
Yep. This one's the
So
heating element.
this is the actual heat exchanger.
And I guess the thing is that if we bought the heating element and then the tank failed in 5 years, it probably wouldn't.
You lose your element in the tank.
You probably wouldn't select the same model if it still exists.
Well, the proposal here is, in the last one, it was a very similar one, same technology, and we decided to go with the stainless steel one that had the 25-year warranty. So this proposal is
Consistent, right?
very consistent with what we did in the past.
So you're recommending it?
So I'm recommending it.
But to speak to your other concern is, we're having trouble funding various repairs and replacements.
Yep. That is an issue, and we shouldn't lose sight that we have a third one that is a year older in another part of the building that is real similar. And we have 2 others that are probably overdue. We don't have any status on those 2. Right, so we don't have any status on any of the other 3. And they're all 1 year new, well, actually, 2 of them are 1 year newer, and 1 of them is the same age. And we don't know where they're at.
So we wouldn't know if they're from the same vendor.
So to finish the motion.
Okay, to finish the motion, I just need one clarification from Jane. Which line is the money gonna need to be transferred into in order to pay out for the hot water heater? What would we put that under?
It will be, it'll be a maintenance replacement equipment.
Okay.
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I want to make sure I understand. The board is making the determination on what hot water heater we purchase, not the superintendent.
I don't think we're doing that. I think we're just
I thought
talking
that's what
about
Mr.
giving.
Jacobson said. He's
That's not-
making a
That's not
recommendation.
what's on the agenda. The agenda is to talk about funding the hot water heater replacement. I think replacement is done. I don't think there's any question here about not replacing it, right?
I can
We're just talking about, the motion was made to add to the agenda the funding for it. So-
Let me put the
So I
motion
guess
out.
my question is, since I know I forget every now and then, but that I also have a right to ask a question to vote sometimes, but, that's my, I mean, is that the question that we're talking about, is funding it? I mean, I don't think anybody here is questioning whether or not it needs to be replaced, or I don't think the motion is. Go ahead, Kevin, you want to repeat that?
I will make the motion. I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the transfer of up to $78,000 from money allocated for the school resource officer to the appropriate maintenance line to fund the replacement of a high school hot water heater.
A second. The motion's been made and it's seconded. Jane, does that answer your question, kind of, or?
My question was, we have numerous quotes to buy it from, but I thought I heard Mr. Jacobson say he recommends we buy X.
Well,
Did I not hear that?
I don't know if he said that, but I mean, that's not a decision
I
for the
think he would
board.
recommend it for
I'm
replacement.
just trying to make sure
I mean, you follow your bid rules and you look and make sure that the bidders are sufficient, you got apples to apples and
That's all I-
qualified contractors or whatever, and make the
Okay,
recommendation.
that's
Which
all
is
I-
why the only way I worded the motion is for placing the funds where you need them so you can access them.
Good, good.
And up to 78, so if you get a better deal, great.
Any further discussion?
Well, I was wondering, is that the only place we can get the money from, the SRO officer?
Well, we're not gonna get them this year. even if
I think
we
it's a
try.
place that makes sense because we're not going to spend the money in this year's budget.
Do we have the money for the snow plowing, the oil, on those 40 or 20 other items that are over and
The ones that are over right now.
When I look at the budget, I'm looking at a bottom line, and as I projected, we have I'm projecting $198,000 balance. So when I'm monitoring the budget, managing the budget, we already have money encumbered for the remaining of the snow. So yes, the snow account is in a deficit, but you have other accounts that are in a surplus.
Can you tell us where that surplus is, sir?
Can you just follow that up with it? Unless you got it handy right there. I mean, the report tonight says that our accounts have surpluses.
I think we're talking another whole way to do another budget projection, so.
No, there doesn't need to be another budget projection. You have a report tonight that has line items there, and it tells you what accounts have surpluses and which ones are overfunded. And when you go across the line, you do the subtraction. There is as you said, $95,000 surplus, at least you're forecasting now. You factored in encumbrances. It's an educated guess of where you think you're gonna be between now and the next blizzards to come through between now and May, I guess. So, I mean, I see no reason why there has to be another forecast. The budget, project budget, and the object budget and the program budgets were included in the Friday distribution. There is enough reports going around. If it can't be determined from what they put out, then we'll have another discussion in finance to figure out where to
We need
find
to
it.
do that.
So,
I just have a comment about the water heater and the tank, and that is that, if, we're going to put this out to bid, that we are examine the bids closely and be sure that the quality level, that we're comparing apples to apples and they're equal, and they have the warranties that we feel are appropriate.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Carol. I think that if nothing else has come out of our conversations around facilities in the last several years, it's that this has got to be about the right balance between the cost of the item and the quality and durability of the item, so that we're not throwing good money after that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you very much. 6, there was no 7. Okay, that brings us to,
Yeah, you had
Tennis court.
discussion on the tennis court safety. net.
oh, 8.6, sorry, yes.
Tennis court safety net.
8.6, tennis court safety net, yes, you were right, sorry. Discussion and possible action regarding the purchase of the tennis court safety net and installation.
Let's see, we have, I'll make a motion that we authorize Dr. Zinsky to spend the 45 or whatever. It's going to be a little more than $45,000 for installation of the 30-foot version of the safety net.
That's 45-1 is the number, Joe?
40, okay, 45-1, and then there's some miscellaneous.
No, and remember, I need some engineering money on that, because this is a project that has to be designed by an engineer, and once I receive the specifications, then I can go out to bid.
Right, so it's going to be above, well, this is an estimate too, so this isn't a quote. So to authorize Dr. Zinsky to go out for the engineering for the 30-foot safety net.
It's the 30, okay, we'll get a motion
And this is at a cost of 41.
plus engineering.
45.
It's going to be more than 45. We have the money in the budget, but we need to authorize which solution we want.
And I need the engineering because that wasn't figured in the price. That was an estimate for the net and the goals to support it.
Second motion.
Okay, second by Carol, open to discussion.
Yeah, this is 10-foot net or the 20-foot net?
Okay, that's what, we had two solutions. One was about 25, this isn't counting the engineering costs, this is roughly the net and pole and installation cost. We had two solutions. We have, both solutions have us remove the fence on the tennis court, replace some of the poles with taller poles, put that fence back, and then add a netting above that overlapping the fence by a foot. So we had two quotes. One was for a 10-foot additional, and so for a total of 20, or one for 20-foot additional, for a total of 30. I think everyone in the facilities committee was not comfortable with the shorter version, and it was the facilities that recommend that we go to the 30-foot fence.
So can I ask a question? Is this budgeted to do it?
This is, remember there was 100,000 that was budgeted for maintenance improvements?
Yeah. So this is included, this is one of those items, right?
I'm sorry?
This is one of those items.
This is one of those.
So why are we voting on it?
I spend money, I guess.
No, it's gonna have to be bid, so it's gonna be in excess of $20,000, so I need some sort of board approval.
To do a bid or to do the work?
To award the bid.
To award the bid. Okay.
And also there is a big difference in price because of the difference in height. You know, one is 10 feet higher than the other, and so our recommendation was to have the higher as a safety issue. And so we needed to know if the board supported that as well, I think, in this process.
But we're budgeted for it, though. I mean, it's in the plan, it's there. Committee's approving or recommending the 10-foot. Is the superintendent recommending the additional height? Okay. So
Because the concern is that the shorter height balls could still clear that, baseballs could still clear that, hit well enough, and get somebody in the tennis court.
Right.
Exactly. That's a no-brainer. So, okay. Are there any-
What bats?
So what are we authorizing as a motion? Is it authorize you to bid, or is it authorize you to do it, or?
Authorizing me to do it, and we're understanding that the cost is going to exceed $20,000.
Okay. So, all right, did you make the motion? Okay, so the motion was there, all right, so that's the motion. Any further discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Great. That's it for that. That brings us to item information number 9. Information items 9.1A, high school municipal calendar events. 9.1B, high school, middle school, use of building report. you have any questions with that, you can reach out to the superintendent. It brings us to item number 10, public comments. Is there anyone who would like to address the board at this time? Yes, Mr. Shea.
This is Dick Shea from Marlboro. Just very quickly, my memory's not what it used to be, but I don't recall previous audits coming up with a laundry list of recommendations like this one did. They all sounded sound, and it sounds like Jane is right on the case. I was just a little bit surprised, and I'm glad we got a clean opinion, because that's really the bottom line about how you're doing. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, if and when you discuss the question of people phoning in for executive sessions, I hope you'll consider that long and hard, regardless of what professional organizations might recommend, because I think the potential is there for a problem, and something maybe you could just avoid by not allowing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. That brings us to item number 11, executive session. I'd like to take a recess at this time.